Thank you for inviting me here. And my name is Jaokar. I am the course director of a course called Artificial Intelligence, Cloud and Edge Implementations at the University of Oxford. And I would like to state that my views are my own, not of the University of Oxford. So this is quite important. Yeah. Um, so just namaste again, formally to everybody. Yeah. So I have a unique background and it sort of spans academia versus industry versus being also on the board of companies. So I have my own company. I'm a chief AI officer for a German company. I'm on the board of a cybersecurity company in New York. And of course, I teach at Oxford. And I think this is the future into many ways. And I think I will see this coming more and more into the world. It also allows me to give a very broad perspective into what the views are. This is what we teach at Oxford, and this is an industry course. And I think a couple of speakers before me talked about the value of industry. And I cannot stress that more for AI because this subject is so fast moving that you can't purely depend on academia. And you have, in fact, large companies like DeepMind, which came out of Oxford and then became acquired by Google. So there is a very close link between academia, research, and industry, specifically in AI and also in our case as well. We also take a very deep and a technical view of AI. So what we are talking about is our course is very engineering led and it is designed to transition your career to AI. So it is not a master's course yet. It is more of a certificate course, but it has a long history of proving people who have transitioned their career to AI. And this is very important because I think that is the biggest need today in terms of the sort of the skills of the future. And more importantly, we work very closely with industry. So some of the names, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Intel, ARM, Verizon, MATLAB. And that is because we are a full stack course, meaning that we go everything from the cloud to the edge devices. And this makes us a very complex subject to teach. And I'm going to share you my experiences of teaching such a course. And unfortunately or fortunately, they are only exclusively in Oxford, meaning that they are non-India. But I think my views would also apply globally. So I hope that is the case. So this is from one of our students, and he has put it in the public profile. And what he says is that he took some ideas we were teaching about time series in our course, went back to his company, applied it, and they are actually making it work in a light bulb moment, as he says. I had a light bulb moment when I was traveling home from my course in Oxford, and he went ahead and started coding and applied. And this is what we like to see. This is what I mean by transitioning your career, doing something very special. And the World Economic Forum has said that we need a reskilling revolution. And why do we need it? This interesting book has a very interesting quote. It's a dystopian view, which says that the future textile mill employs only a man and a dog. The man to feed the dog and the dog to keep the man away from the machines. Yes. So this is the dystopian view. Yes, this means that just about everything could be potentially taken over by machines or AI. And somehow we, in the very near future, have to transition our thinking to this kind of world. Yes. And how are we going to do this? So my core point of my talk is that we need innovation in education, not only in the technology, but in the pedagogy. Yes, in how you teach. And these are some of the suggestions based on my teaching at Oxford, and I believe they are also applicable everywhere. The first one is that we address large-scale engineering problems for AI. I think this is very important because AI will become easier. Yes, because it's very easy to do a simple regression or a classification and so on and so forth. What you need is much more complex things which really go ahead and make a difference. We try to go towards that direction. I think India should as well. The second point is that we are building a methodology, and I'm very happy to say that I'm working with two institutes in India. I cannot name this, but we are working very closely with outside of my work. I'm taking some of my work and sort of sharing it with companies in India. We're trying to build a methodology to put AI into engineering problems, because this is a big need for the moment, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of focus on financial services, insurance, things like this. But I think that the future way of AI will be very much kind of enabling and transforming industries. And this is what we are actually teaching in Oxford. And I'm sort of trying to build a methodology around that and taking it outwards and trialing it out very nicely into two universities in India. We will look beyond coding to maths and algorithms. The previous speaker, Dr. Mohan, mentioned about the value of maths, and I totally agree, because I think that people that will make a huge difference, and I believe for the exact reasons what he mentioned. So I think this is very important as well. The next one is we work closely with the industry. This also I mentioned to you before, partly because in my opinion, I think many industries are going to be totally transformed. And by transformed, I mean that the value chain of the industry will change. This will maybe create far more interesting manufacturing jobs. And those jobs will not be the same as what manufacturing jobs are today. Yes, so you're not telling somebody to sort of tighten this screw, for example. Yes, so this will be a much more deeper thinker person. He or she will be in manufacturing, but their level of education, their level of motivation, their level of skill will be very high. The next one is work with harder and larger problems. I already talked to you about that. I said what we are doing is taking AI to edge devices, combining AI with IoT. And that is not an easy thing, meaning that you start to take AI into chips, you sort of start to talk to hardware and software and stuff like that. And the final sort of slide to kind of summarize a few more ideas here. Diversity is important. I believe I am personally very diverse in terms of both my sort of way of thinking, also being in Oxford and so on and so forth. I believe diversity is extremely important, and India is very good at that. I think complexity is important for the reasons I said. The rate of change in AI is very important. From my experience, I think the big thing which people miss is that AI has a cognitive dependency and a cognitive overload, meaning that there is a lot of things to learn in a very short time, and they depend on each other. And therefore, this is what I mean by the teaching. The level of teaching has to be far more important, and has to take into this idea that how are we going to train somebody to see where they are at and where they could go in a relatively short space of time, and then they are becoming independent. And the last point I would like to stress is I'm a kind of a bigger fan of countries like Canada, the UK, and the US when it comes to AI. And the reason for that is because these countries have done far better at hubs, have locations where a lot of talent has come together. Oxford's a classic example. Cambridge is a classic example. In Canada, the C4 Institute is practically the leader in AI. And these are actually not very typically government funded. They're very different from the Singapore and the China model. I think perhaps we are getting too seduced by this sort of AI superpower idea. Yes, I think that we should look at our strengths. We should look at our industry strength. We should look at small areas, geographical areas in India which show potential, and sort of encourage them to have the thousand flowers bloom philosophy. And the last thing is, yes, this is my last slide. So to conclude, I believe that AI needs an innovation in education, much of which some of the things we are working on. AI is best suited for hard problems because it's going to be like everything is going to be AI very soon. So you're going to have to kind of distinguish yourself. And I personally see a lot of scope for AI in engineering, because I think that that is the huge area which will make a huge impact to jobs, future skills, and so on and so forth, and yet not being fully touched. And I'm very pleased to see that most of the previous speakers, Dr. Archana, and also had some of the similar ideas into sort of things Dr. Mohan I was talking about as well. So thank you very much. And that concludes my talk.